All right. The second kind of tissue I'd like to cover is connective tissue. Connective tissue, generally characterized by sparse cells in an extracellular gel matrix or some kind of extracellular matrix. So the cells are widely spaced apart, generally. That distinguishes them from epithelial tissue. We talked about epithelial tissue and that its function is to line cavities, therefore it's tightly packed. Also for absorption, it's tightly packed, loads of cells. Connective tissue has different functions. Bone is a kind of connective tissue, for example. It's structural. So connective tissue consists of cells sparsely situated with a matrix of either bone or collagen or something like that. The functions are to connect, connective tissue, connect organs to each other. Connect organs to each other. Also, to give support and protection. Connective tissue surrounds organs to support organs, keep them suspended in place, but also some connective tissue is adipose, and that maintains the temperature and insulates various organs. They also operate as storage of energy and heat production. In particular, adipose tissue. Connective tissue can also function in movement and transport. These are examples of different kinds of connective tissue. Let me start with A. Loose connective tissues found under the skin. So, for example, if you were to take your skin like that and try to pull it, well, you can't pull it all the way over there. It remains attached to the muscle underlying it. It's largely collagen, different kinds of fibers that we'll look at. Fibrous connective tissue form, for example, tendons and ligaments. Adipose tissue are fat cells that each contain a fat droplet. Cartilage you'll find at the end of bones, for example, that prevents friction. Bone, another kind of connective tissue, you find for locomotion, long bones, ribs to protect your vital organs. And the last kind of connective tissue is blood, which includes white blood cells, red blood cells, and plasma. First, I'd like to look at loose connective tissue. Loose connective tissue. Those are sparse cells with fibers. These large fibers, these large wavy fibers, are collagen. So that's one way that you can tell that a fiber is collagen, is because it's wavy. It gives it a little bit of flexibility. And there are other kinds of fibers, like reticular fibers, for example, and these fibers are proteins. They're fibrous proteins. Collagen is a protein. There's cells that make collagen. They're called fibroblasts. A blast cell is a cell that's functional. Fibro for fibers. That's the main cell types. You find it beneath your epithelium in your skin, surrounding your internal organs, provides a protective layer over your nerves, your muscles, and your blood vessels. Elastic fibers are quite thin. They're quite thin. They're coated with glycoprotein. And they are elastic. So those are the fibers that are elastic enough to pull your skin, but are strong enough to keep from breaking. Oh my gosh, no, scratch that, sorry. Scratch the coated with glycoprotein. Cross that out. That's a different kind of fiber. Elastic fibers are not coated, sorry. They're made of elastin. They're made of elastin protein. So they stretch and recoil just like a rubber band. Just like a rubber band. So they give your skin the ability to stretch, your lungs, when you're breathing in and out, your lungs stretch, and your arteries as well. They're able to stretch and then recoil, go back to their original shape. Elastic fibers. Fibroblasts are the cells that secrete fibers. So you can see here, this is the cell. Long, and it's secreting fibers here and here. So the rough endoplasmic reticulum of the cell, as you know, makes proteins. In this case, the proteins are long and fibrous. So fibroblast is one kind of cell. Another kind of cell that you find in loose connective tissue are plasma cells that produce antibodies. And this is the nucleus of the cell here. It's quite a large nucleus. And these, can you see that very well? See how they're dotted with something. What are they dotted with? Yes, fibroblasts do make collagen and reticular and elastic fibers. And what are these dark black dots that are surrounding the endoplasmic reticulum? Ribosomes, yeah. So that's rough endoplasmic reticulum. So it's the rough endoplasmic reticulum that's producing the antibodies, which is a protein also. Plasma cells. So plasma cells are instrumental in immunity, as are macrophages, which you also find in loose connective tissue. Loose connective tissue is also known, by the way, as areolar tissue. I just always call it loose connective tissue. Macrophages are gobbler uppers of foreign bodies, pathogens that you have in your body. Things like viruses and bacteria, for example. They activate the immune system. Mast cells, another necessary cell in the response to injury. It's involved in the inflammatory response. The mast cells produce histamine, and heparin. So histamine dilates blood vessels so that more white blood cells can go to the area. So histamine dilates blood vessels, and heparin thins blood, makes it less viscous. And the purpose is to bring blood with immune cells, white blood cells, to the area. So mast cells are instrumental. So heparin prevents premature clotting. Mast cells. Before I go on, one type of fiber, well, actually, let's just talk about the fibers for a second. The different fibers of loose connective tissue. Collagen. They're also known as white fibers. They're tough. They resist stretching. So you can't stretch them like an elastin fiber, but they're flexible. So they move, but they don't stretch. They make up, or I should say they're prevalent in loose connective tissue. And they make up ligaments and tendons. And the deep layer of the skin. Reticular fibers those are the ones that are coated with glycoprotein. And they form a kind of a framework, like scaffolding almost, for the spleen and lymph nodes. The other type of fiber is an elastic fiber. They're also called yellow fibers. They're thin and branching, and they stretch and recoil back to their original shape. Good. I just wanted to make sure that we covered all of the different kinds of fibers. Adipose tissue always looks like a large empty cells. They do have nuclei, and the nuclei are often just shoved into the corner, into the edges of the cells. But what is inside the cell is a fat droplet. There's a fat droplet inside the cell. They're very thin. The membrane looks very thin. And the function of adipose tissue or fat is to cushion organs. They cushion the eye, for example, for the storage of energy. And insulation. Insulation from cold and electricity. Adipose connective tissue. Blood. Blood is also a connective tissue. There are a few cells, but quite a lot of matrix. The matrix in this case is called plasma. Plasma consists of water, salts, and dissolved proteins. The cells are leukocytes and erythrocytes. Platelets are cell pieces. So they're not a complete cell with a nucleus, rather they're cell pieces. So this is an example of a blood vessel with epithelial tissue around the outside, red blood cells on the inside, and a layer of connective tissue, and in particular in this case, muscle tissue that allows for contraction. Red blood cells, and these are some of your smaller white blood cells. Let's see, what else did I want to say? I want to say something else about blood. Well, where is it found? Blood vessels, of course. Arteries, veins, capillaries. The heart. Yeah. Dense or fibrous connective tissue, those are such things as ligaments and tendons. So this cross section here is a cross section of ligaments. And all of these are densely packed ligaments. The fibers are parallel collagen fibers. They're densely packed. Yeah, so ligaments which attach bone to bone, and tendons attach muscle to bones. Bone tissue, there are two kinds. There's spongy bone and compact bone. And the matrix is complex. It's calcified. So the matrix is calcified. It's a mineral. It's a mineral matrix. The lamellae are layers of this matrix. Concentric layers like that. Those are all layers of the matrix as it's laid down by the cell. Inside here is a canal called a Haversian canal. So these cells, they are called osteocytes. They make the mineral matrix, and lay it down outside them. But they require blood and they require nervous stimulation. So that's provided by the Seversian canal, blood and nerves. The lacunae, so these smaller dark areas here and here, can you see that? Here. Lacunae are like little depressions, little hollows in the bone, and they contain osteocytes. So an osteocyte is a non-functioning when the body requires more bone, it's called an osteoblast. So it's functional. Previous slide. I'm not sure which one that you wanted to go back to. Well, perhaps we'll do that a bit later. I'll review whatever it is that you need to review. Cartilage has also sparse cells called chondrocytes when they're non-functional, chondroblasts when they're functional. They are trapped in these lacunae, the cells, but they lay down a very interesting kind of matrix. So the matrix is, I need to look it up because I don't remember the name of it exactly. It's chondro something or other. Instance. Cartilage. Okay. Rubbery. That's the consistency. It is a rubbery matrix. Yeah. We'll just call it cartilage. So there's a whole line of fishes that are called chondriichthyes, and those are your sharks. Sharks have an entirely cartilaginous skeleton, a skeleton made entirely of cartilage. Interestingly, cartilage has no blood vessels. There's no room for blood vessels. No blood vessels, so diffusion brings nutrients and removes waste. There are 3 kinds of cartilage, and you'll be looking at these in the lab, so I'll encourage you to do that in the lab. The 3 kinds are hyaline, fibrocartilage, and elastic cartilage. Hyaline cartilage. It's kind of clear. It's a clear, glassy kind of matrix. It has finely dispersed collagen fibers. It supports your airway, for example. So the trachea is surrounded by hyaline cartilage. So it maintains the shape of the trachea. It keeps the trachea open for the passage of air. It's over the end of bones. At the movable joints so that there isn't as much friction. It's at the sternal end of the ribs. It's the supportive material of the larynx. So you'll find it in the larynx and the fetal skeleton. Those are some examples of where you'll find hyaline cartilage. Elastic cartilage is hyaline cartilage, but with an addition. It's got a web-like mesh of elastic fibers. So you'll find that on your external ear. It has its support, but it's also quite flexible. And the epiglottis, the structure that closes the airway when you eat and closes your esophagus when you breathe. And the last type is fibrocartilage. So fibrocartilage, it's a bit of a combo. It contains relatively densely packed, somewhat densely arranged collagen fibers. Its purpose is to resist compression. You'll find it in the pubic symphysis. And between the invertebral discs. So they keep your vertebrae from compressing. That is something that occurs with age. They get more and more compressed. One quick thing that I haven't covered is spongy bone. So inside your compact bone is spongy bone. In particular, it fills the head of your long bones, like your femur. Yeah. It's always covered by compact bone. And its function is to store energy, so it stores fat and produces blood cells. And I believe that's all I wanted to say about that. Oh, I have a test, a connective tissue test. Okay, let's stop there.